Have you heard of the Potato Chip Quilt? It's one of those blocks you just can't stop making, like eating potato chips. But today I'm not following that exactly. I will show you how the original block works, and then I'll show my own modified version that uses strips and scraps, and is perfect for a quick and scrappy quilt. Alright, so the first thing I have this jelly roll, and it's a lot of black and white fabrics, which I really like. So I'm going to use that. And then I have some really bright coloured fabrics. A lot of these are by this guy here, K Facet. I'm not sure if I actually pronounce his name correctly, but he makes a lot of really bright, nice colours. And these fabrics here are all by him. And I have these other bright fabrics. Now these may also be K Facet fabrics, but I've had them for quite a long time and I just really can't remember. They could also be Free Spirit, and I think they do sometimes work together as well. That looks like a Cave Facet for sure. But anyway, so these are the fabrics that I'm going to use. So a potato chip quilt is basically lots of pieces put together that are all 2.5 inches by 4.5 inches. So these are 2.5 inch strips. So I'm going to cut some of those, and then I'll just cut some more strips out of a variety of these colours. And when you're making this quilt, you can mix all your colours up. You don't have to have a colour theme even. So it's a good one for scraps too. So I'll go and cut these into 2.5 by 4.5, and then I'll show you what to do next. Now for this, I wanted to show you this cutter that I particularly like to use. It's a ruler and cutter combined, and it's by Fiskars. And I have it sitting on this cutting mat, which makes it a little bit harder to see the markings, but I am going to use the cutting mat too. You have to have it stood on one to cut with it. But it has all the usual ruler markings. I've turned it a little bit so you can see there. I have a 10-inch square that I'm going to cut. You can actually cut multiple layers with this. I'm just cutting a single because I'm just demonstrating. So I like to use the cutting board to help put my material, my fabric in a straight line, and also I use it as a guide for the ruler to make sure the ruler's all sitting straight. I just find to use a combination is the easiest way to do it. And then I'm finding the 2.5 inch line on here and laying that on the edge of my fabric. And this orange part is the handle, and the rotary cutter blade is attached beneath that. So I just lifted it up to get it back into position. And I've made sure it's carefully lined up. And then I'm just going to press on both halves and slide that up, and it cuts really well. And I like this ruler because it doesn't slide around like rulers do sometimes. You apply an even pressure downwards and it helps to hold everything in place. And just to show you that it is exactly 2.5 inches, I'm just showing you that on the ruler there. This is great for cutting lots of strips or lots of repeat pieces. I don't do it for a lot of tiny individual pieces, but for projects like this, it's perfect. I have the square one and a longer 6 inches by 24 inches one. And it also has the rotary blade attached in there. I'm just going to go ahead and cut all my pieces, and with this tool it won't take very long. So here I have a variety of 2.5 by 4.5 inch strips cut from the fabric that I showed you. First, I'm just going to show you how I would make a straightforward potato chip quilt. So I have all these pieces ready to go. You can lay these potato chips out any random order or any direction that you want to. And this is just quilting math you don't have to be afraid of, and I love that. The only rule is that in the end your block has to be 12.5 inches square, and you'll need 18 of these little pieces. Maybe you want to do that kind of arrangement. Maybe you just want to start in the center and go around. You can add in different colours and move them around, and be as scrappy as you want. Because of seam allowances, you can't really lay this out exactly the way it's going to look. I'm just going to overlap a little bit to give you a better idea. So when these are sewn together, this one actually will be the right size to sew down here, for example. Well, let's not do one just the same right next to it, eh? You can move these around any way you want to. The next row actually has 2 on. So let's put 2 like that. 2 across the top. I'm just basically going around from the centre here. You can play with these, lay them in any order or colour combination you want to, as long as in the end you have a 12.5-inch square. That's what makes this so good for scrappy quilts. And your squares can all be different, they don't have to be the same. So you have like a random square there with all these colours in it, and it's great if you want to make a scrappy quilt, or if like me you're using up some things that you've had for a while. And that's the basic potato chip block for your quilt. But I've decided to do a bit more organised pattern with this today. So I'm just going to move this around a little bit. Put that one. Actually, I'm going to put 2 of the same colour in the centre, just to give you a better idea of what I'm doing. And I'm going to have a coloured one. So I've got a centre, then a row of these pretty coloured fabrics, and now I'm going to edge it all with the black and white. Now when you cut and sew this properly, these will all, I promise, go together and look and fit exactly. I like this look with this centre square surrounded by the colour and then the black and white again. And to put a quilt together like this, what I would do is I would alternate. I'd make an even number of A blocks like this and B blocks that are just reverse colours. So I'm going to do that, but this is where I'm going to do to vary from this potato chip quilt, because yes, I need the 2.5 by 4.5 here, but these 2 I could just cut in one strip. That would end up being 8.5. So I would cut 2.5 by 8.5 for that size strip. My big decision is whether to make the black and white all variety or to do them all in the same colour all the way around. Do you find black and white goes with anything? It seems to, doesn't it? It's almost like a neutral. Each block will be 12.5 inches unfinished. So I'll need 16, 8 A blocks like this and 8 B blocks. And I think I should have plenty of fabric for that. I've decided my black and white strips are all going to be varied. So I'm going to cut all those in the actual potato chip style, the 2.5 by 4.5. The coloured strips I'm going to just cut actually in strips, and I'll give you the measurements. First I'm going to show you how to sew it together just using all potato chips, but in the A block design I'm going to use. For this design I need 12 of the black and white potato chips. And this is the coloured layer, potato chips for now, but on the other A blocks the long pieces will be replaced with a single strip. I wanted to show a basic block before I change it to the other method. This one will look slightly different, but it'll fit right in. And I'll give you the measurements for the alternate block when we get there. The centre is going to be the black and white strips. So I'm going to sew 2 together to make the centre. And I am using a 1/4 inch seam for this. This is block A in potato chip style. And for this video, I'm just going to finger press this open, but normally I would take this to my iron and just press it. The next row is going to be my coloured, and it's going to go around the edge there. So I'll need one on each side, which I'm going to put that way. And then across the top, I need to join two together. And I know I'm going to need the two pieces sewn together for the next part, so I'm just going to go ahead and chain sew those on. I'll put my other one down there. Now when I get onto my next row of black and whites, I'll need a set of 2 and a set of 3. Just to enable me to chain piece, I'm just sewing ahead here because I know that's what I'm going to want. And I finger press this all open. And these will go on the top and the bottom like that. Put together more of my set here. So I've got that one on there. Now I'm going to use this in the quilt, even though when I do the rest, I'm actually going to do a strip. And just use one colour in each block. Now I'm going to go here, and these will go there like that. For the black and white, I'm going to keep making the potato chip because I like that variety there. And I don't particularly like this black and grey strip here. I think you find that when you get a jelly roll or a pack, there might be a couple of colours that you don't like. But really, once you've put it all together, the different fabrics disappear into the whole and it'll look fine. So I'm going to use it and not leave it out. And if you'll see, I could have put the 2 black and white pieces on here, but if I did, that join, I'd have had to match that seam up there. This way, there's no seam to match because I've put it on a straight piece, so that's why I've done it this way around. And I'm just going to add the opposite side the same way. Do you ever just finger press things? Some people just do this all the time rather than pressing, and there's actually a little tool that you can buy to rub along and finger press if that's what you choose to do. I do usually use my iron. And I am going to pin these last 2 strips on just because they're longer and I want to make sure they fit properly. That is my block using the actual potato chip method. And then I'm going to go on now, cut some strips and use the other method. So I'm going to make 8 like this. The only difference is going to be on the others that this is all going to be the same fabric. I've cut all the black and white little squares that I'm going to need to make this. Each one is 2.5 by 4.5, but they're kind of in organised piles from the colours, so we need to mix them up. So I'm just like making a mess with them, really. You could put them in a bag and separate them. I'm just going to pick them up randomly, and I don't mind working from a messy little pile here. I'll put them in a plastic bag and shake them up a bit more as well, and just randomly put my hand in the bag. And if you've got kids, get them doing this, they'll love it. Now once you've got these mixed up, you know, because I've got the sample that I already made, that you need 2 sets of 3 There's 3 on each of the longest side. I'm going to chainsaw all of this to make it much quicker and easier to do. So I'm going to make 8 blocks like this. Well, I'm now going to make 7 because I'm going to use this one. So I'm going to make 7 more. I know that I need enough sets of 3 and sets of 2 for 7 blocks. So that's 14 of each total. And the 2 sewn lengthwise for the centre. And you know, chain sewing is always the quickest way to do anything. So I'm chain sewing all those sets first. So once you've done the 14, cut them apart. And sew a 3rd piece on that's any different colour to what you've already got. I'll have a pile of strip sets of 3 sewn together. And I'll also have a pile of 14 that are just 2 sewn together. I also need to make the centres. So I'm taking 2 more blocks that I've cut and I'm sewing them along the long edge. And you'll need 1 of these for each block. So I need to make 7. And if you didn't already have a sample block like I do, then you would need to make 8. So that's how you're going to chain sew all these pieces in the black and white for this A block. So I've chained all the pieces I want for this block. So I have 14 of the 3 inner rows, 7 of the 2 centres sewn together, and 2 for the other part of the outside block. So now I just need to cut the fill-in parts. Let me go back to my original piece for this. I think you can see I have this section here, which is a 2.5 by 4.5, so I need to cut 2 of those. And then the next row is on this piece, it's 2 of the potato chips. And of course I'm not going to do that, I'm just going to cut 1 long strip, which is going to be 8.5 by 2.5. And I'm going to cut enough for 7 more blocks like that. For the A block, I've cut some strips here. So I'm just going to lay these out and show you the way that they will lay when they're made, and then I'm going to sew them. So I'm going to start with the centre. These 2 are going to lay up the sides. And these 2 across the top. And it doesn't quite look right because of seam allowances. When it's sewn together, they will fit. The next thing to do is the 2 down the sides. And then the 3 across the top. And that's the order that I'm going to sew them in. I'm going to chain sew them, so the first thing I'm going to do is chain sew on these 2 pieces. So sewing them together is going to be just the same as the first one I showed you. So I'm just going to go ahead, chain sew them all, and then I'll show you a finished block, and then I'll show you how we're going to lay out the B block. Here are all my A blocks made. So this is the one I did originally that really is the true potato chip block. As I say, I'm still going to use it. The others all have a single fabric in each one, but because it's almost the same colours, I still think that'll fit in just fine. So I'm not worried about that. So I'm just going to put those to one side for a minute and we'll do the B block. And there'll be more colour than black and white in the B block. So again, I've cut all the pieces for it and I'm going to start to lay it out. The black and white parts, let me just bring this one to show you. All we're doing here is alternating the colours. So on the B block, this will be the black and white. So all I needed to cut was 2 for the sides to make the 8.5 and 1 for the top and bottom. And then, of course, these parts, I'm making them all the same colour, so I've just cut them in strips, the same as I did on the A block. There is a couple of exceptions with that, so I'll just tell you what they are first. If I had enough fabric for the centre, this part, if I had enough fabric, I just cut that as a 4.5 inch block, because there was, you know, no point in cutting it in half to sew it back together again. My husband makes me laugh. He'll quite often say that when I'm making quilts. He'll say, why do you want to cut a perfectly good piece of fabric just to sew it back together again? You know, people that don't quilt, they just don't get it, do they? So that's going to be my centre. That's a 4.5 inch square. The next thing I'm going to put on are some singles. I have those cut here. Let's see. Let's do this one. And this one. Oh, it's two stuck together. This one. And then a 2 goes there. And then around the outside, of course, are the coloured ones. So these are the 2.5 by 8.5s. They'll go there. And these are the 2.5 by 12.5s. And they'll go there. There. We'll just move that back a bit so that you can see that better. There we go. Okay, so again, I'm just going to sew that together, not on camera, and then I'll show you what it looks like laid out. Now for this centre, if I didn't have a big enough piece to make that as a 4.5, I have again just sewn together 2 of the small blocks, and I haven't pre-done that. I'm just going to do that as I sew it. Like this one, for example. I'll just sew those there to make that centre block. Alright, so I'm going to go, I've got 8 of each of these, and I'm just going to go ahead and sew that together, because the assembly is just the same, and I'll come back when they're finished. So I have my quilt laid out here, the blocks the way they're going to, it's not sewn together yet, it's just laid on the carpet. And you can see I've got one block missing, so I have to find more material to make a block for there. That's due to a mistake on my part, and on one fabric I cut a 2-inch strip, and I don't have any fabric to replace it, so now I've got to find another colour to fit in there. So I did make one block, and I thought that that might tone in, but really I don't like it. I don't think it goes in there, so I'm not going to use that one. But I'm going to look through my fabric and see if I can find another block to go in, and it will be one of the more purpley blue blocks, because I've got less of those anyway, and I think that'll look better. This is the fabric I've decided to use. I've laid it between the 2 other purplish colours that I've got on here so that you can see that it matches really well. And they are the same brand. This is a Free Spirit or a Cafe Facet piece as well. And it does have pretty much the same colours in there. So I've got this quilt put together. It's just 4 rows and 4 blocks in each row. The only thing I did when I laid it out was I put an A block and then a B block, an A block and then a B block, and on the next row I think you can see, maybe if I go to a close-up so you can see one block, the block with the black and white strips and the block with the colour around, and then on the next row, in other words, they're just alternate. Each row is the alternate block, both sideways and up and down. And I think that's come out pretty good. I like that. This is great. It can be a scrap quilt. You can use any colours in there. I like the black and white theme mixed with the brights. I'm not going to put a border on this. It's big enough without it. It's 48 inches square. I have some fairly plain black that I'm just going to use as a binding. I don't have anything to use for a backing for this, so I have to buy some backing, and then I'll get the backing and binding on, and it'll be ready to donate. And this used about half of the jelly rolls, so I've actually got enough to make another one. So I'm going to find some more bright fabrics out and make a second one. I hope you've enjoyed this. It's another scrappy quilt. There are so many, and they're just great to do. If you like it, hit the notification bell for more videos. And thanks for watching. Bye.